Here's what's wild. You asked for closeness, but in their brain it sounded like pressure. Let me show you exactly why. Alright. I'm not going to romanticize avoidance or turn this into soft psychology poetry. I'll talk like a close friend who's telling you the truth, not what sounds comforting. Chapter 1. The moment you ask for closeness, what starts breaking inside them. So, here's what I think, and you might not like it at first. When you ask an avoidant for closeness, you think you're asking for connection. They don't hear connection. They hear loss of control. And no, this isn't because you asked wrong. It's because of how their brain is wired. Let's slow this down and walk through it step by step. Step 1. You say something normal, something basic, something healthy. Maybe it's, "Can we spend more time together? I miss you. I need more reassurance. I want to feel closer to you." To you, this is simple. It's emotional honesty. It's intimacy, but the avoidant brain doesn't process it like that. Step 2. Their brain immediately translates your need. Here's the first brutal truth. Avoidants don't hear needs. They hear expectations. So instead of hearing, "I want closeness with you," their brain translates it into, "You're responsible for my emotional state now." You won't believe this, but this translation happens automatically. They're not choosing it. It's reflex. And once that translation happens, the spiral starts. Step 3. The pressure alarm turns on. Now their nervous system kicks in. Not emotionally. Physiologically. Heart tightens. Chest feels heavy. Mind speeds up. Why? Because closeness to them isn't safe. It's associated with being trapped, being overwhelmed, being consumed. So when you ask for closeness, their body reacts like you just asked for more access to them than they can survive. Can you imagine living like that? Where intimacy feels like danger? Step 4. They start mentally rewriting the situation. Here's where it gets messy. Instead of sitting with your feeling, their brain starts defending itself. Thoughts like, "Why is this suddenly an issue? Things were fine before. Why can't they just be chill? This is too much." Notice something important here. They're no longer thinking about you. They're thinking about escape. That's the shift. Step 5. Closeness becomes a threat to autonomy. This is the core issue most people miss. Avoidants don't fear love. They fear losing themselves inside love. So closeness doesn't feel like we're bonding. It feels like I'm about to lose freedom. And freedom to an avoidant equals safety. No freedom equals panic. That's why your emotional needs feel suffocating to them even when you're being calm, respectful, and loving. It's not about intensity. It's about interpretation. Step 6. They feel cornered, even if you didn't corner them. Here's another uncomfortable truth. The moment you express a need, they feel like, "I have to respond correctly or I'll be trapped." That's why they freeze. That's why they go quiet. That's why they delay replies. That's why they emotionally shut down. Not because they don't care, but because care now feels like obligation, and obligation feels like a cage. Step 7. Their brain searches for relief. So now their system is overloaded. What does the avoidant brain want at this moment? Not closeness, not resolution, not communication. It wants space. Space equals regulation. Distance equals calm. Detachment equals safety. This is why they suddenly change the subject, minimize your feelings, say you're overthinking, say, "Can we talk about this later?" or disappear emotionally. They're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to breathe again. The hard reality you need to hear, and I'm saying this bluntly on purpose, your need for closeness is not wrong, but it collides directly with their survival wiring. That means you asking for more doesn't inspire them to lean in. It triggers them to pull away, not because you're needy, not because you're dramatic, but because closeness equals loss of control in their nervous system. Let me call something out clearly. If you're waiting for the moment where they finally realize my needs aren't dangerous, you're waiting for rewiring, not realization. Insight doesn't fix attachment trauma. Love doesn't override nervous system patterns. Patience doesn't magically make Closeness feels safe to someone who equates it with threat. That's not pessimism. That's psychology. Quick reality check for you. Ask yourself this honestly. Are you trying to explain closeness into someone who feels safety and distance? Are you hoping consistency will outwork their avoidance? Are you shrinking your needs to avoid triggering them? If yes, you're already doing emotional labor they're not even aware of. And that imbalance matters. Let's keep going, and I'm not going to soften this. Chapter 2. The avoidant inner dialogue after you ask for closeness. So here's what most people get completely wrong. They think the avoidant pulls away because they don't care enough. That's lazy thinking. The real problem is worse. They care, and that's exactly what scares them. Now let me walk you through the actual inner dialogue. That starts running in their head after you ask for closeness. Not what they say out loud. What actually happens inside. Step 1. Why do I suddenly feel uncomfortable? This is the first thought. Not, I don't love them, but why do I feel tight all of a sudden? They don't even connect the feeling to you at first. They just feel restless, irritated, emotionally itchy. And instead of asking why, their brain immediately jumps to removal of discomfort. That's important. Avoidant brains are trained to eliminate feelings, not explore them. Step 2. This is too much, even when it's not. Here's where distortion kicks in. Your simple request gets magnified. I want to feel closer becomes, they want more of my time. They're going to want more reassurance. This is going to escalate. I won't be able to meet their needs. Notice something? They're not responding to what you asked. They're responding to what they think will come next. They're fighting a future that hasn't even happened. Can you imagine living like that? Always bracing for emotional debt? Step 3. The responsibility panic. This is the core fear they rarely admit even to themselves. They think, if I let this closeness happen, I'll be responsible for their happiness. And responsibility feels terrifying to them. Why? Because deep down, avoidants don't trust themselves to stay. They don't trust their capacity to show up consistently. They don't trust that they won't eventually disappoint you. So instead of risking failure, they pull away before expectations grow. That way, they never have to face their own inadequacy. That's harsh, but accurate. Step 4. Emotional detachment as self-defense. Now comes the shutdown phase. Their brain does this on purpose. They emotionally numb out. They intellectualize your feelings. They minimize the importance of the conversation. Thoughts like, this isn't a big deal. They're being dramatic. Why can't relationships be easy? I just want peace. But here's the lie hidden inside that last sentence. Peace doesn't mean harmony to them. Peace means no emotional demands. And closeness is perceived as a demand even when it's healthy. Step 5. You start feeling the distance. Now let's talk about you. This is usually the moment where you notice. Their replies get shorter. Their tone changes. They seem distracted. They stop initiating. And your brain goes, did I do something wrong? This is where anxious people start chasing. This is where secure people start questioning. This is where avoidants start justifying. And here's the ugly part. They often don't miss you yet. Because distance gives them relief. Step 6. Relief feels like proof they did the right thing. This is one of the most dangerous loops. Once they create distance, their nervous system calms down. And their brain goes, see, I feel better now. They don't connect the calm to avoidance. They connect it to you being the problem. So they tell themselves, this relationship is too intense. I feel better when I'm alone. I'm just not built for closeness. That's how avoidance becomes self-reinforcing. Relief becomes evidence. Step 7. The silent moral high ground. Here's something people don't like hearing. Avoidants often believe they are being mature by pulling away. They think, I'm not leading them on. I'm protecting both of us. I don't want drama. But what they're really doing is avoiding discomfort, not acting with integrity. Honesty would require staying present. Growth would require tolerating closeness. Accountability would require emotional effort. Avoidance avoids all three. Step 8. Why they don't explain any of this. You might wonder, why don't they just tell me this? because they don't fully understand it themselves. They feel discomfort gives create distance, gives feel relief. That's the entire emotional vocabulary. So instead of explaining, they go quiet, change the topic, say, I don't know, or act like nothing happened, and that leaves you holding all the confusion. Let me be blunt with you. If you're waiting for them to suddenly say, wow, I see how my avoidance hurts you, that usually only happens after they've lost you. Not because they didn't care before, but because distance finally removes the threat and allows reflection. Closeness blocks insight. Distance creates safety. That's the paradox. Hard question for you. Ask yourself this and don't lie. Are you trying to build intimacy with someone whose nervous system equates intimacy with danger? Because if yes, no amount of perfect communication will fix that. You're not dealing with misunderstanding. You're dealing with misaligned safety systems. All right, stay with me. This is where people usually get uncomfortable because it kills a lot of false hope. Chapter 3. Why closeness feels like loss of control to an avoidant. So here's what I think most people still don't fully get. Avoidants aren't scared of you. They're scared of what closeness does inside them. And once you see this clearly, you'll stop personalizing their behavior and also stop excusing it. Let's break it down properly. Step 1. Control is their emotional oxygen. For an avoidant, control isn't about dominance. It's about regulation. Control means I decide when I engage, I decide when I pull back, I decide how much emotion is allowed, I decide what I share. That control keeps their nervous system calm. So when closeness enters the picture, control feels threatened. Because closeness requires mutual emotional access, responsiveness, consistency, vulnerability, and those things can't be fully controlled. That's the problem. Step 2. Closeness equals exposure. Here's the part they never say out loud. Closeness exposes their emotional limitations, their fear of dependency, their inconsistency, their internal emptiness or confusion, and avoidants hate being seen in places they don't understand themselves. So when you ask for closeness, their brain hears, I will be seen. I will be needed. I might fail. That feels dangerous. Not emotionally dramatic, existentially threatening. Step 3. Why they feel safer when you need less. This is going to sting, but you need to hear it. Avoidants feel closest to you when you expect the least. Why? Because low expectation equals low emotional demand. When you're independent, quiet, self-contained, and not asking for reassurance, they feel relaxed. They think, this is easy. I can breathe here. Nothing is being asked of me. And they confuse that comfort with love. But comfort isn't intimacy. It's just absence of pressure. Step 4. Why you shrinking yourself feels like improvement. Let's call this out clearly. When you stop expressing needs, become more distant, act less emotionally invested, pull back your energy, they often respond with more warmth, more effort, more interest. And people misread this as progress. It's not. It's regulation. You becoming smaller makes them feel safer, not more connected. That means the relationship only works when you are less you. That's not a win. That's self-erasure. Step 5. Dependency triggers their old wounds. Avoidance learned early that needing others leads to disappointment. Depending on people leads to loss. Emotional reliance is unsafe. So when you express closeness, it wakes up that old programming. Even healthy dependency feels like a trap to them. They don't think, we're bonding. They think, this could go wrong. I could be trapped. I won't be able to escape later. And escape is their ultimate safety plan. Step 6. Why they resist working on it. You might suggest talking things through, therapy, emotional check-ins, relationship repair, and they'll often respond with resistance or avoidance. Why? Because working on it implies sustained emotional presence, ongoing accountability, reduced control over distance. They don't want to be bad people. They just don't want to be emotionally cornered. Growth feels like loss of autonomy to them. Step 7. The control illusion. Here's the tragic part. Avoidants believe distance keeps them safe. But distance also prevents real intimacy, keeps relationships shallow, reinforces loneliness, confirms their belief that closeness never works, so they stay safe and unfulfilled. They confuse emotional numbness with peace, but numbness isn't peace. It's just absence of feeling. Step 8. What this means for you, no sugarcoating. Let me be blunt. If you have to walk on eggshells, monitor your needs, regulate their emotions, reduce yourself to keep them close. You're not in a mutual relationship. You're in a system where their safety is prioritized over your emotional reality. That's not sustainable. And no, loving them harder won't fix it. Reality check question. Ask yourself this honestly. Are you fighting for closeness with someone who only feels safe when closeness is minimized? Because if yes, the problem isn't communication. It's incompatibility until they do serious internal work. Let's finish this properly. No fantasy ending, no emotional fluff. Chapter 4. When avoidants finally feel it and what you should do instead. So here's what I think most people are secretly waiting for. They're waiting for the moment when they finally realize what they lost. And yes, that moment can happen, but not the way you think, and not in a way that saves you. Let's break this down honestly. Step 1. When avoidants actually start missing you. This is the part people misunderstand the most. Avoidants don't miss you while you're asking for closeness. They miss you when there's no emotional demand, there is no expectation, there is no pressure to respond, there is no risk of being needed. In other words, when you're gone, distance removes the threat. Safety returns. Only then can feelings surface. That's why avoidants often wake up after breakups, long periods of silence, you emotionally disengaging. Not because you mattered more than, but because closeness stopped feeling dangerous. That's the brutal truth. Step 2. Why their realization is often too late. Here's the hard part people don't want to accept. By the time avoidants feel safe enough to miss you, you've already been hurt too much. You've already questioned your worth, over-explained your needs, shrunk yourself, waited alone emotionally. Their realization doesn't undo that damage. Insight doesn't equal repair. Regret doesn't equal change. Missing you doesn't mean they can suddenly show up. Step 3. The false hope trap. Sometimes they come back. They text. They apologize. They say they've thought a lot. And for a moment, it feels different. Why? Because distance is still present. But once closeness starts creeping back in, the same nervous system wiring activates, same pressure, same withdrawal, same confusion. Without real therapeutic work, the cycle repeats. Every time. Step 4. What you're tempted to do and why it backfires. Let me call out the common mistakes. You try to be more patient, ask for less, communicate more gently, prove you're not too much. Here's the blunt reality. You cannot earn emotional safety by self-abandonment. Reducing your needs doesn't heal them. It just teaches them that distance works, and that slowly destroys you. Step 5. The one thing that actually changes the dynamic. This part matters, so listen carefully. Avoidants only confront their patterns when distance no longer protects them from loss. Avoidance has real consequences. Their strategy stops working. That means you stop chasing. You stop over-explaining. You stop managing the relationship alone. Not as manipulation, not as a tactic, but as self-respect. Step 6. What healthy closeness actually requires. Let's be clear. A healthy relationship requires emotional availability, responsiveness, willingness to tolerate discomfort, mutual effort. If someone cannot tolerate closeness without shutting down, they are not available, regardless of how much they care. Care without capacity is meaningless in practice. Step 7. The question you should be asking, not about them. Stop asking, why are they like this? Start asking, why am I trying to make this work alone? Because here's the truth most people avoid. If you stay, you are agreeing to a dynamic where your needs are negotiable. Their comfort is non-negotiable. Your pain is collateral damage. That's a choice, not fate. Step 8. Final reality check. No sugarcoating. Let me say this as clearly as possible. You are not asking for too much. You are asking the wrong person. Someone who only feels safe when you need less will never give you more. Not consistently, not sustainably, not without serious internal work. They must choose themselves. Final thought. If you have to convince someone to be close to you, you're already too far away. Real closeness doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like mutual willingness. And if that's missing, the problem isn't you, it's the mismatch. That's the full picture. If this hit home, don't stay silent. Comment your experience, like the video, and subscribe, because understanding patterns is the first step to breaking them.